Oh, I'm sure a lot of you remember that show, right? Teen drama at its best. Dawson's Creek, and what a cast for that program. Katie Holmes, Michelle Williams, and a Canadian named Joshua Jackson. Yes, Joshua played the underachiever called Pacey Witter.
Me?
Here's the thing about Josh, though. He pulled off something what a lot of actors are unable to do. He went from being a teen idol to a serious actor working with some of Hollywood's biggest stars. So, how did he get to be the guy that you know? Well, let me tell you. Josh was born in Vancouver. His mama was a casting director, and when he was a little kid, he got small roles in commercials and movies. In fact, by the time he was 9 years old, he landed the role as Charlie in that Emilio Estevez classic, Mighty Ducks. That film was a hit. Joshua also starred in the sequels, and by 1998, they knew who he was down in Hollywood, so he landed the role in Dawson's Creek. Now, for 6 seasons, he was pretty much every teenage girl's and some teenage boy's imaginary boyfriend. Along the way, he starred in movies like Scream 2 and Skulls, played a gay teenager in Cruel Intentions, along with the lovely Sarah Michelle Gellar. Anyway, never mind. After Dawson's Creek ended, though, in 2003, Josh didn't want to play the young guy roles. He went on looking for more mature films. There was I Love Your Work, where he played alongside Giovanni, Ribisi, and Christina Ricci, Aurora Borealis with Donald Sutherland and Juliette Lewis, and Bobby with Anthony Hopkins and Helen Hunt. Now, last year, Joshua returned to television as a character named Peter Bishop in that show Fringe. Oh, he also came back to Canada to star in the road movie 1 Week. That's a film about a young man's motorcycle trip from Toronto to Vancouver.
All right. The ground rules of the campfire sing-along clearly state that everyone has to participate.
Honestly, you don't want me to sing.
Really, I insist.
Si tu vois mon pays malheureux.
This is Joshua Jackson.
Thanks for having me.
How are things?
Very good. Cool.
Oh, they like you. It's a really, really good movie that you and Michael McGowan made.
Thank you.
I've heard it described as such, and I agree with it. It's kind of a weird love letter to Canada.
It is very much, I think, a love letter to Canada. Absolutely.
But only Canadians would find a way to make a love letter to Canada involving a dying man.
Right. It's our tall poppy thing. I love this. We have to die.
We have to die.
Yeah, I mean, the fact, I actually think the fact of the character's cancer, because when the movie starts out, you find out immediately that he's given that impossible piece of news. You have 1 year-ish to live. What are you going to do? And he has a freak out, and part of his freak out is that he realizes that he has to get out and see his own country. And I do think that the crisis of his life is not really the cancer, it's that he hasn't been living. So it takes something that drastic to sort of kickstart him into doing something. And then it sounds like you've done these trips before, and I've certainly done these trips. Our country is pretty damn inspiring if you get out and see it. It's so beautiful. And I'd never been, you know, I'm West Coast biased, so I'd never been into the prairies. I didn't understand how beautiful they are. We just sort of assume, flat, boring, take a plane.
Yeah.
But it's unreal. The scope and perspective of being out there and being this tiny little speck and having the horizon line in 4 directions with no trees and no mountains, to me was the most powerful part of the trip because I'd never been around anything like that.
And you know, an interesting relationship for you as well with that kind of journey, because as a Canadian who's lived here but also lived a long time in the United States, you're seeing it from a very different perspective than most people get.
Well, also, I do, I mean, it's funny, I see both living in the States, I still feel like a foreigner, and I feel like I see Canada a little bit differently, having lived outside it for quite some time. And I do think that there's this sort of, there's a feeling that the road trip is an essentially iconic American thing. And America is beautiful, very physically beautiful, a lot of different things because they've got the South that we don't have here, very different terrain to what we have. But what I've never experienced in the States that I have experienced on road trips here is the scale. There's no place I've ever been on the face of the planet that has the wide openness, the grandness of the mountains. You know, if you've seen an evergreen forest that runs off of this mountain into that mountain into the next mountain, it's an inspiring country.
Dude, it takes you 24 hours. You can get it to Texas from Toronto.
Yeah.
It takes you 24 hours just to get out of Ontario.
Yeah,
it's enormous.
I mean, people don't. You know, my better half is European, and
she's German.
She is German, yeah. But she loves when I make jokes like that. She thinks it's so funny. But you know, for them, like, if they get on a plane for a couple hours, they're in a whole other country, in a whole other language. And I tried to explain to her when we were doing the trip, I was like, oh, we're at the end of the second day, we're almost finished the first province. She's like, what? Because in 24 hours, you can drive between Berlin and Paris. I mean, no place else, maybe Russia, which I've never been to, has the same type of grandness that Canada has.
You know, for a guy who's been very successful in the States, what did it mean to you, or why did you make a film in Canada that is so fundamentally Canadian? This is a Canadian's, you have a roll up the rim to win joke in there. You have, which I got a kick out of, you have this wonderful moment with Gabe Hogan, a great actor, where you got to kiss the Stanley Cup. This was a Canadian film.
Well, and the part of the road trip is part of any good road trip is that you're simultaneously, if it's your own country particularly, you're simultaneously falling in love with the things that you already knew about your country, and you're learning a bunch of new things at the same time. And we throw all this Canadiana, you know, and I love that my countrymen come up with things like having a gigantic papier-mâché goose on the side of the road. I know. That's hilarious. Totally. You know, or like you drive for 800K from the nearest city, you're just about to get into the next city, and there's a 45-foot nickel. Yeah. I mean, who thinks that up?
You sitting in an enormous Muskoka chair, an Adirondack chair.
Totally. Like, I know what I'm going to do. I got the weekend free. I'm going to make a supersized Adirondack chair, naturally. You know, it's just, I love that stuff. I think that's great. And the reason to want to come back, there's something, people ask me all the time, because I have lived in the States for a long time, and I've traveled a lot and been all over the place, which is good. But people ask me, you know, why it is that I still feel Canadian. You know, if I don't live here all the time, why it is. And there's something essential to Canadianness that we all share from east to west that is our national identity that doesn't go away.
One of the true signs of the Canadian actor on set, the Canadian actor is the guy who hangs around with the crew, not the other actors.
True enough.
Which I hear you do that.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah, hangs around with the crew, because that's usually where the beer is.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
What's Fringe like? I saw you at about 5 in the morning. I was sitting on a plane flying to Toronto from LA, and I saw you there, and you were coming up to shoot the pilot.
My next day, literally the day after that, was when I started Fringe. So good things happen when I see you. Yeah, the Fringe went well. I mean, we shot the pilot up here, and to be perfectly honest, the crew here, who really broke their back to get that pilot together, got shafted, because then we shoot the show down in New York. But other than that, the show's going really well. I mean, it's crazy to be back on TV again. Yeah. But I'm kind of a sci-fi geek, so this show is a ton of fun for me to work on.
Was it a conscious decision to keep some distance between you and television to now?
Yes, not maybe for the reasons that people would assume. TV is hard work, as I don't have to tell you, but the hour-long television drama just takes a lot of time, and it takes a lot of effort. And after 6 years of being on it, I wanted some time back to myself. I spent 18 to 24, and this actually, I don't begrudge Dawson's Creek at all, because it did all the good things that have happened in my life since then have come sort of from that experience. But certainly at 24, almost 25 years old, I was tired, just physically tired, and I hadn't had any space that was my own for 6 years.
How long did it take from the end of Dawson's Creek where they stopped calling you Pacey and they started calling you Joshua?
I'm still waiting.
Well, another neat thing in
I
this...
even do it to myself sometimes.
No, you don't.
Not in my personal life, but we were doing a scene the other day where I had to say, and this is what happens when you get tired. You make embarrassing mistakes that then stick with you forever, and now I'm going to say it on national TV, so it'll really stick with me. The name of the character on Fringe is Peter Bishop, and I just was tired, and I don't know why, and I said, "Hi, I'm Pacey Bishop," and that's it. Like, the crew, I'm done forever.
Yeah, you totally have to live with that.
That's not going away.
One of the things I liked about, I mentioned Gabe Hogan, the guy who's in Rent-A-Gully, there's a scene where you go up and you kiss the Stanley Cup in this film, which is a nice, beautiful scene. I've even tried to steal a kiss from the cup successfully. But Gabe is wearing an Anaheim Ducks jersey. He's an Anaheim Ducks player who won the Stanley Cup, and I thought, well, you were like 9 years old when there are the Anaheim Ducks because of your movie Mighty Ducks.
So here's the thing. As it turns out, I'm never going to play professional hockey, and I'm never going to win the Stanley Cup.
Don't sell yourself short, Jackson.
Well, now I've kissed the cup, and the curse is on me, so I know that that's not going to happen. So I always hoped that, I have this random association with a professional hockey team, and so I thought at some point I would get that name etched on the cup. The year after Disney sold them and they ceased being the Mighty Ducks and now they're just the Anaheim Ducks, that's when they won the cup. So I don't really have any hook. I can't even get free tickets to the Ducks games anymore.
Did you used to get free tickets?
Yeah, they used to have to, they would, in the very beginning, they would give the kids a couple tickets.
Wow.
but that's all gone.
You know, when you moved, you're like, what, how old are you? 2 years old when you moved to LA the first time?
First time, yeah.
First time, and you had a house in Topanga Canyon, which
Yeah.
is a beautiful area.
Yeah.
Beautiful area.
Yeah, gorgeous.
But I heard that you own that house now.
Yeah, when my parents were still married, born in Vancouver, his job took him down south, so we moved to LA, and we ended up living in this place in Topanga. They got divorced, so flash forward 17 years, I was in Topanga for a friend of mine's wedding, somebody who I'd known since that era, since I was 2. And we were down there, and the day after the wedding, decided to go out and see my old house, because I hadn't seen it in a while. And the guy who bought it from my father was sitting on the porch, and it was actually my buddy Daniel who called up to him and said, you know, this is Josh's old house. And I looked up and I said, yeah, you know, that's funny. I put that sticker in that window when I was a little kid. And he goes, what, you mean in the dragon room? And I was like, the dragon room, that's my bedroom. And the dragon was painted by my mother's friend Virginie, so it's all these childhood memories come back. Anyway, I'll make the short version of the story. I go charging across the field to be like, man, it means a lot to me if I could just come in and see the place. He shows me, go through room by room by room by room, and it is like a mausoleum of my childhood. And at the end, I say, look, if you ever consider selling this house, let me at least have a crack at it, because I'd like to know that I tried. And the next morning at 9 a.m., he called me up and sold me the house.
For real?
For real.
Here's a question I have. The dragon was still on the wall?
Yeah. Well, you have to understand how this story actually makes sense, you have to know what Topanga is. Yeah. And Topanga in the 60s and the 70s was a beatnik, hippie sort of retreat from the world. And then it sort of stopped in 75. Mm-hmm. And that's it. I mean, there's really some Nixon protests still going on there. They want to end the Vietnam War. And of course this guy left the dragon on the wall. And people think I'm making this up when I say it, but when I'm standing in front of this very hippie, trippy dragon that was painted on my wall, I said, I cannot believe that you left this here. And he said, I knew it meant a lot to somebody and that they were going to come back for it someday.
What a nice guy.
Yeah, totally.
The film is called 1 Week. It opens in theaters in March. Please take the time and go watch it. You're really going to enjoy the film. Thanks for being here, man.
No problem.
Joshua Jackson. Yeah, we'll be right back. Okay. Oh my goodness.